other hard currency issuance, as well as local currency debt issuance. It's not a record year, but it's a very solid year to date.
Why are we seeing more local currency issuance?
So emerging markets, particularly the major emerging markets, have really worked on developing their local markets. They realized that that can be a shock absorber for various shocks, either from abroad or domestically, and a lot of progress has been made there.
You ever read something that hits you, not because it's dramatic, but because it's quiet, too quiet? That's exactly what happened with this new IMF report. One single line buried deep in the middle of a 70-page policy document, and it changes everything for XRP, XLM, and HBAR. I'm not even exaggerating. They didn't headline it. They didn't call a press conference. No, they just slipped it in there like it was nothing. Settlement systems leveraging interoperable digital assets are to be considered foundational to the next phase of cross-border payments infrastructure. That's it. That's the sentence. But if you know this space, if you've been following the ISO 20022 framework, the central bank digital currency pilots, the BIS corridors, the Ripple integrations, you know that's the shot heard around the financial world. See, for years they've denied it. The IMF, the BIS, the Fed, the ECB, all pretending that decentralized technology was interesting but too volatile or too experimental for serious settlement infrastructure. And yet here we are, in 2025, watching the same institutions start to adopt the very systems they once dismissed. And what assets sit at the core of that interoperability model? XRP, XLM, HBAR. It's poetic, really. The coins everyone ignored when they were a few cents. The ones mocked during bear markets. The ones you were told aren't real crypto. And now the International Monetary Fund, the heartbeat of global liquidity, just confirmed that the architecture of the new financial system will be interoperable digital assets. Let's call that what it really is, the official nod. But here's the part that makes this moment electric. This isn't coming soon. It's happening right now. You've got central banks across Africa and Asia quietly connecting pilot programs that settle through stellar rails. You've got RippleNet nodes now being mentioned in IMF and BIS corridor diagrams, not conspiracy theory blogs, official documents. And Hedera? Hedera is the silent tech stack sitting behind digital identity systems and sustainability data the IMF and UN are using as compliance backbones for the new digital economy. This isn't speculation anymore. It's confirmation. Now let's zoom out for a second. Bitcoin's sitting comfortably over $100,000. Ethereum's making noise with ETF 2.0 approval. But if you listen closely, if you really watch where the institutional narrative is shifting, it's not about speculation anymore. It's about infrastructure. It's about who's powering the pipes of the new monetary system. And those pipes, they have ISO 20022 labels printed all over them. This one line, this one tiny, unassuming line, is the final proof that ISO-compliant digital assets aren't just speculative crypto projects. They're infrastructure-level settlement tools. The world has been waiting for the trigger event, the switch that says, the digital monetary era has begun. This IMF document, that's the switch. Because look, every major market shift starts the same way. First, they ignore it. Then they fight it. Then they regulate it. And finally, they adopt it. And right now, we're in that final phase. Adoption, hidden under words like interoperable, foundational, and cross-border efficiency. It's wild to think back on it, right? Remember when XRP was labeled a security? Remember when Stellar was just the cheaper Ripple? Remember when Hedera was corporate crypto? Those narratives are dead. The SEC's 2024 settlement with Ripple, the Stellar Development Foundation's IMF Sandbox partnership, and Hedera's integration with MasterCard's Sustainability Data Network, those were all breadcrumbs. Now we see where the trail leads. This IMF document doesn't just validate the tech. It validates the vision behind it. Because what the IMF really said in that one line, if you read between the bureaucratic language, is this: the next financial system will not be built on legacy banks. It'll be built on interoperable digital assets. Let that sink in. For XRP, that means global liquidity rails are no longer hypothetical. Ripple's on-demand liquidity is being rebranded as cross-border digital asset settlement infrastructure in IMF terminology. For XLM, It means Stellar's partnerships with MoneyGram, Circle, and UNDP are now part of global compliance architecture. And for HBAR, it means its consensus service, once just enterprise blockchain tech, is being quietly slotted into real-world financial infrastructure as the trust layer. It's happening. It's literally happening under our noses. And here's the emotional part. Most people won't see it. They'll read the report, skim past that one sentence, and move on. But the ones who've been awake, the ones who've held through the noise, the lawsuits, the FUD, you know exactly what's going on. We've reached the phase where the world catches up to what the XRP, XLM, and HBAR communities have been saying for years. This isn't about tokens. It's about the reprogramming of the global financial system itself. 2025 will be remembered as the year the IMF quietly confirmed the new world order of finance. Not through a flashy announcement, but through one buried line that said everything without saying it out loud. Because that's how real power shifts happen. Not with noise, but with a whisper that changes everything. Let's talk about what that IMF line actually means in the real world. Because one thing is reading it on a page, thinking, yeah, that's interesting. And another is seeing it unfold in real time. This isn't theory anymore. This is infrastructure being built while most people are still arguing over memecoins and price targets. XRP. Let's start there. Ripple isn't just a company anymore. It's become the bridge between the old system and the new. On-demand liquidity, ODL, if you've been following, that's not just some tech demo. In 2025, it's being quietly integrated into central bank corridors. That's right. Governments are running live pilot programs that use XRP as a settlement asset between fiat currencies. Think about that for a second. A coin once dismissed as just another token is now literally moving trillions across borders faster than legacy Swift rails could dream of. And it's not hype. This is operational, tested, and compliant with ISO 20022 standards, the global messaging protocol that basically tells the world how money talks to money. Every time you see interoperable digital assets in a policy paper, that's XRP and its siblings, quietly holding the line. And when the IMF says it's foundational, they're not exaggerating. They're acknowledging that these networks are no longer optional. They're essential. Then there's Stellar. You remember Stellar, right? That cheaper Ripple joke that everyone ran with years ago? Well, here's the kicker. Stellar's role in 2025 isn't small. Its partnerships with UN agencies, remittance networks, and even multiple central banks make it a core player in emerging market liquidity solutions. Stellar isn't just moving money. It's powering compliance for countries that don't even have mature banking infrastructure. Cross-border payments, micropayments, payroll systems, all quietly leveraging XLM as a backbone. It's insane how much power sits behind that simple, unassuming ticker. An HBAR Hedera hash graph. Let me tell you something. Hedera has always been underestimated because it doesn't scream volatility. It doesn't pump and dump. It just works. In 2025, Hedera is quietly embedded in enterprise-grade settlement systems, supply chain finance, and digital identity verification. Governments and multinational corporations alike are adopting BAR's consensus layer because it's fast, auditable, and yes, compliant. It's literally the plumbing of the future economy, and nobody's celebrating it in headlines. Yet, the emotional part of watching this happen is wild. You've held through years of doubt, through years of people saying XRP, XLM, HBAR aren't real crypto. And now the institutions are adopting them wholesale. Feels like vindication. Not just for hodlers, not just for traders, but for anyone who believed in the vision behind these networks. And here's where the IMF report makes it even crazier. When they talk about interoperable digital assets being foundational, they're not just talking cross-border payments. They're talking compliance, transparency, auditability, systemic risk reduction. They're talking about the ability for the world to move trillions of dollars with a level of oversight and speed that was impossible 5 years ago. And XRP, XLM, and HBAR are literally at the center of that conversation. Think about the scale. Imagine a corridor connecting Africa, Europe, and Asia where banks aren't waiting 3 days to settle, where remittances don't cost 10% in fees, where compliance is automatic and frictionless. That's not some future dream. That's the world being quietly tested right now. And if you've been paying attention, it's XRP powering most of the rails, Stellar powering emerging market remittances, and HBAR acting as the trust layer for enterprise and government adoption. It's intoxicating, honestly, because on the one hand, the markets are wild, green candles, price spikes, volatility, but on the other hand, the actual narrative is quietly unstoppable. While everyone is watching charts, the IMF, central banks, and multinational organizations are quietly writing the rules of the next financial system. And the funny thing? It's the coins that survived the lawsuits, the FUD, the skeptics, XRP, XLM, HBAR, that are the ones actually being used. That's why I keep saying, this isn't about trading anymore. It's about participating in history. It's about recognizing when the world quietly pivots and being prepared to understand the implications before the mainstream even realizes it. Because once this narrative hits headlines, the market will react explosively, and a lot of people will be left behind. And let's be honest, we're seeing the first hints already. XRP liquidity corridors are expanding. Stellar's CBDC pilots in Southeast Asia and Africa are scaling up. Hedera partnerships with Fortune 500 companies are rolling out enterprise solutions live in the real world. You can feel it in the air. Something historic is unfolding, and it's moving faster than most people can process. Emotionally, it's exhilarating and terrifying. Exhilarating because you've witnessed years of preparation finally paying off. Terrifying because the scale of what's coming is so massive that if you're not paying attention, you could completely misread it. And for anyone who thought crypto is just speculation, this is the line in the IMF report that proves you've been wrong. The quiet adoption, the infrastructure build, the regulatory recognition, it all comes down to that single line. That one sentence that says, yes, interoperable digital assets are not just real. They're essential. And when you think about it, XRP, XLM, HBAR aren't just surviving the 2025 bull cycle. They're leading the next phase of global finance. They're not memes, they're not pumps, they're bridges. They're corridors. They're the invisible backbone of the future financial system. So while the world obsesses over price charts, you've got to look deeper. The IMF just gave the blueprint. The coins are already in position, and the first wave of real adoption, not hype, is already rolling. You ever notice how the loudest moments aren't always the most important? In crypto, that's true every single time. Right now, 2025 feels like a movie. Green candles flashing, headlines screaming, influencers hyping every little spike in XRP, XLM, and HBAR. And yet the real story isn't on Twitter, it's in the corridors no one's talking about. This is where the emotional ride gets messy. The highs feel like euphoria, but the lows are still terrifying if you're not prepared. Because let's be real, even with XRP breaking new institutional adoption records, XLM powering CBDC pilots, and HBAR quietly embedded in enterprise infrastructure, people are still staring at charts like they tell the whole story. They don't. You've seen it before, right? A coin pumps, everyone goes crazy, FOMO hits, tweets blow up, and then reality hits. But here's the difference in 2025. The fundamentals don't lie. XRP isn't just pumping for hype. RippleNet is expanding cross-border liquidity corridors, while the world's banks quietly test them. XLM isn't just green on the chart. It's moving real remittances and integrating with government digital ID programs. HBAR isn't flashing volatility. It's settling enterprise transactions behind the scenes with a speed and security legacy systems can't touch. And that's where the emotional chaos kicks in. You want to sell because the market screams, but you can't. Because deep down you know this isn't noise, this is history in motion. And the closer you get to understanding that, the more addicted you become to patience. The harder it is to just watch the green candles and not react emotionally. This is a tricky phase for anyone who's been here before. You've survived bear markets, lawsuits, skepticism, and regulatory storms. You've watched XRP tank, XLM get ignored, HBAR silently grow. And now, after years of chaos and doubt, everything starts aligning. And yet the market doesn't move smoothly. It jerks, it spikes, it tests your emotional limits. The 2025 cycle is the perfect storm of emotion and fundamentals colliding. The IMF acknowledges interoperable digital assets. Central banks are testing corridors. Corporations are quietly deploying Hedera for settlement. And prices? They reflect anticipation, not reality, because the market doesn't fully understand what the institutions already do. This is why holding is harder than buying. Because when everyone else is panicking over price volatility, you're sitting there thinking, they don't see what I see. They don't understand the rails being built under the hood. And that patience, that's what separates those who just trade from those who participate in history. I won't sugarcoat it. It's stressful. Watching XRP spike on news while waiting for full adoption, seeing XLM make massive gains while governments quietly integrate it, or observing HBAR settle enterprise contracts without anyone noticing. It's a constant tug-of-war between fear and conviction. And that tension? It's intoxicating if you've been awake long enough to appreciate it. But here's the beautiful part. This phase, this emotional roller coaster, it's the one that forges the real believers. The ones who panic sell miss out. The ones who chase the hype too late are left holding emotions, not strategy. And the ones who hold through it, they understand that XRP, XLM, HBAR aren't just coins, they're infrastructure. They're bridges to the new financial era. And infrastructure isn't built in a day, it's built over cycles. We're seeing it live. XRP corridors expanding, stellar CBDCs rolling out, Hedera enterprise adoption growing quietly but massively. And every move, every adoption, every official nod from organizations like the IMF reinforces that this isn't speculation anymore. It's participation in a systemic upgrade that the world is only beginning to notice. And that's why the noise is so dangerous. Green candles, Twitter hype, even mainstream news, all of it tries to make you act emotionally. But the real game is patience. The real game is understanding that XRP, XLM, and HBAR are quietly cementing themselves as core infrastructure. And when the mainstream finally wakes up to this, the market won't just move, it'll leap. Emotionally, it's exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. Every news drop, every partnership, every technical milestone feels like a personal validation. But you have to stay grounded. You have to remember that fundamentals aren't flashy, and adoption doesn't announce itself in TikTok clips. It happens quietly, systematically, and exponentially. So yes, the euphoria is here. The noise is loud. The green candles make your heart race. But underneath all of it, XRP, XLM, and HBAR are doing what they've always done. Quietly changing the rules of the financial game. And if you've held through the doubt, if you've stayed awake while everyone else slept, you feel it. That quiet certainty that this is bigger than price, bigger than hype, bigger than anything most people understand about crypto. This is the phase that separates history makers from spectators. And for anyone holding XRP, XLM, and HBAR in 2025, it's both terrifying and thrilling. Because the ride isn't over, not even close. For years, you've held through volatility, lawsuits, skepticism, and derision. You've watched memes and hype chase pump after pump, and yet here you are, still holding XRP, still watching stellar CBDC corridors grow, still observing Hedera's consensus service quietly settle real transactions for global enterprises. The patience, the doubt, the fear. It all culminates now in this surreal moment where you realize you're witnessing history in the making. And that's terrifying, isn't it? Because the scale of what's happening is insane. The world is slowly adopting interoperable digital assets as foundational infrastructure. Governments are no longer testing, they're implementing. Banks are no longer theorizing, they're settling. Corporations are no longer experimenting, they're operating. And XRP, XLM, HBAR? They're at the center of it. Now, let's talk human for a second. Holding through cycles like this isn't just financial, it's emotional survival. You've got to resist the panic, ignore the FUD, and look past the noise. Green candles make your heart race. Red candles make it sink. And mainstream headlines only add to the chaos. But if you step back and breathe, you realize that the real story isn't in price. It's in adoption, infrastructure, and the narrative quietly unfolding while everyone else is busy reacting emotionally. Here's the kicker. The mainstream still doesn't fully understand what's happening. Most people see XRP spike and XLM move, and they think, wow, crypto is hot again. But you know better. You know that behind the scenes, RippleNet corridors are expanding, stellar CBDC pilots are growing, Hedera is being integrated in enterprise and government workflows, and the IMF just gave it all a stamp of legitimacy. That's why this cycle feels different. It's not speculative frenzy. It's institutional acknowledgement. It's real change. Emotionally, that's a wild place to sit. It's excitement, it's anxiety, it's exhilaration, and it's frustration all at once. You want everyone to see it, to understand the magnitude, but you also know that most won't until it's too obvious. Until XRP, XLM, and HBAR aren't just whispered about in niche crypto circles but mentioned in boardrooms and policy meetings worldwide. This is why having a plan matters. Not just for trading, not just for profits, but for your sanity. Decide your exit points, understand your risk, and most importantly, recognize what you're holding. Because when history moves this fast, it can reward and punish in equal measure. Life-changing gains are coming. Life-changing losses are possible if you let emotion dictate decisions. And yet, despite the chaos, despite the volatility, the long-term view is crystal clear. XRP bridges fiat and digital, XLM powers cross-border compliance, and HBAR ensures trust and transparency. Together, they are quietly rewriting how money moves, how governments interact, how businesses settle, and most people haven't even noticed yet. This is why 2025 feels like a turning point. Not because of hype, not because of tweets or charts, but because the world is quietly shifting to a new financial system, and the coins you're holding aren't just part of it. They are the system. That realization, it hits hard. It hits deep. It's the kind of moment that makes every sleepless night, every FUD-filled headline, every market crash worth it. So here's the thing. If you're watching this video, take a moment, breathe, reflect on what you're holding. XRP, XLM, and HBAR aren't just investments. They're your seat at the table while the financial world rewrites itself. Don't get lost in the day-to-day noise. Understand the big picture. Recognize the magnitude. And prepare yourself emotionally to ride this wave because 2025 isn't just a year in crypto. It's the year the narrative shifts forever. And before you go, here's what I want you to do. Smash that like button if this video gave you chills or made your heart race. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because we're going to watch this story unfold together. Comment below. I want to know which coin you're holding through this historic moment. XRP, XLM, or HBAR. Be honest, share your story, your fear, your excitement. Let's talk about it. Because this isn't just about price action. It's about witnessing history together. And remember, hold with purpose, plan with clarity, and watch closely. The financial world is quietly pivoting, and the coins in your wallet are more than speculative tokens. They're the backbone of the next era.